Hey everybody, today we're going to take a look at a couple fitness watches. Now before we get started, you might ask yourself, why does a guy from an automotive media channel decide to do a video about a couple fitness watches? And since you asked, I'll go ahead and tell you, because I have been a long-time user of fitness trackers and fitness watchers. I'm an avid runner and biker and all that stuff, and it really doesn't matter what walk of life you work in. This is a good product for everybody from a health perspective. If you do any kind of activity tracking or you want to try to stay healthy or lose weight and that sort of thing, you might want to look at products like this. So I decided, since I was ready to make a change and I was looking for a couple, I wanted to put these into two specific categories and give you some options to choose from and hopefully some things to think about. And we're going to get into those two and a little bit more coming up next. Okay, so there's two basic classes of these devices. Most of them are watches, some of them are wearables, most of them do have some sort of ability to tell time. And those categories are activity trackers, and it's kind of a wellness tracker. And they'll do things like track your steps, the number of stairs that you climb or the flights that you climb in a day. Sometimes they'll do heart rate. A lot of them will do sleep, which actually is a very important part of any sort of health and wellness program. And they offer just quite a few basic features. Now, the most popular name brand in that category is Fitbit. And Fitbit does a very good job of also helping you track your caloric intake, so what kinds of foods you eat and basically the calories associated with all of those. The other category is a full-on fitness sport watch, and those sport watches will typically be catered to the most popular sports, typically running, biking, swimming, kayaking, climbing, rock climbing. If you do any sort of hiking or any sort of outdoor distance movement, usually there's an activity that you can fit to match on that. A lot of them will just go ahead and track a full-on triathlon. So if you're going to do multiple sports together, they can handle it. Those typically are a little bit more robust, so they have better water resistance. They're designed to take the elements a little bit better. They're also more expensive, so you want to make sure that it's a good fit before you go down that road, because in many cases, they can be 2 to 3 times as much as the basic fitness tracker alternative. Okay, so the devices that I'm looking to replace to modernize my new fitness and activity tracker are actually two things. The first is a fitness watch, and it's made by Garmin, and it's a Forerunner. And the other one is a Fitbit Flex. Now that's just the wearable band that has the little activity tracker in it. Didn't do time or anything like that. It just basically was a step and sleep tracker. So the way that I approached this was basically to do everything that I needed to do that my previous devices could already do. And then if there were any additional features that I cared about or that were of value to me, I wanted to look at those too. So the two that I most seriously considered were the Fitbit Ionic, which is right here, and we're going to get into that one first, and then the Garmin Fenix. Now, the model that I went with was a Garmin Fenix 6X Pro. There are a lot of different Fenix models, and there's a lot of difference in between them. And I'm going to post a link here to a comparison sheet that Garmin offers that allows you to basically take those features and map it down to the one that matters the most to you. All right, so just to give you an idea of what I'm replacing, this was my Fitbit Flex activity tracker there, and this is my Garmin Forerunner. This was actually a 910 XT, so it's older. Pretty capable in its day. This thing did obviously GPS enabled tracking. It was waterproof. You could swim in it, you could bike on it, bike with it, certainly run with it. And it showed a lot of stats. it didn't have any heart rate or cadence capabilities built into the watch. You had to wear like an ANT plus band around your chest for the heart rate portion and that sort of stuff. So did its job, certainly an old friend, but technology has come a long way since this guy was out, and that was one of the reasons I was looking to replace it. Been having some issues with the buttons, and then this was also about shot. The batteries inside these just don't last that long. So here we go. All right, so first things first here. This is going to be, the Garmin Fenix is going to be 2 to 3 times as much typically as the Ionic. This runs in the neighborhood of $200 to $250. This is going to run anywhere from $500 on up over $1,000 depending on the configuration that you get. This is going to be targeted more towards a health conscious individual. So if you're not a specific athlete, if you're not someone that has a specific sport that you're trying to better yourself with, but you just want to go out and maybe lose a little weight or stay healthy, or you want to track your sleep and you're okay with wearing a full-size watch in your sleep, this Fitbit would be a good candidate for any of those things. It will also track activities like biking and running, and we'll get into that in a minute, but it's very light in terms of its capabilities on those. The Garmin, on the other hand, is going to go full-on competitive tracking, and just the level of depth that you get from each of the specific sports is going to be a lot more than what you're going to get out of the Fitbit. So, you know, it's going to give you things right out of the box like altitude. Both can do heart rate monitoring. The battery life on this is far superior, and there's a reason for that. There's a pretty significant difference in how the displays work. But you're going to get into a better graded GPS. You're going to get into just a sturdier watch. The water resistance depth is better. Now, something else that both of these do, and I know why they do it, but I'm not super thrilled about it, and I'll show you. They both have contact points that they use for charging on the back. Now, they have to do it this way to keep the water resistance that the watches have, but these are all proprietary charging cables, and so you're going to end up with, especially on a watch like the Garmin, where you don't have to charge it as often, you're going to lose these because you're going to set it aside for a week and then you're going to forget where you put it. Now, the Fitbit does require you to charge it every few days, I've found, so a little bit better odds there. So both of these watches have their version of a pay module in them if you care about that, and that would be similar to like an Apple Pay or an Android Pay, where you queue up payment on your watch and then you hold it up to the card reader for payment. And that is something you set up in your mobile app as a companion. Everybody's getting into that game now because it's lucrative for them. They get a cut of the transaction when you use their payment module. So it just makes sense that they're going to all try to get a piece of that pie. Supplemental income, if you will. All right, let's take a look at the Fenix 6 first. Now, as I mentioned, there are a lot of different versions of this. Mine is the 6X Pro. Again, take a look in the comments and we're going to post a link to where you can find the comparison of all the different models and features. One of the most notable differences is as you get up into the higher priced versions, you get a better glass on the watch face. I would suggest though that any of these watches, don't expect to get more than 3 or 4 years life expectancy out of them. With a rechargeable lithium-ion battery, there's a limited number of charge cycles that you're going to be able to get out of these. And just the abuse and the technological advancements that you're going to see, these watches probably aren't going to be as capable in a few years with new smartphone OS versions that you have to pair them with and so on and so forth. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to get up into this spend category, know that it's still going to end up at some point being a disposable purchase. All right, that said, this watch has a very interesting backlight. It's not very bright, but it's clever. And it's clever in the sense that it does adjust, and I can see it in the dark, and I can see it out in full sunlight. It does have an actual light feature that I can turn on and off there, if you can see that, and it does make it completely capable of night viewing. And I really don't mind that I don't have a full-on, you know, smartphone style watch display face, because that seems more fragile to me. This works, it does the job. It does have changeable faces, and you can select which ones you like the most. The one that I've got selected here, you can see I've got 9 days of battery charge left. It's got high and low temperatures for the day. It's got my current heart rate, my altitude, course of the time and date, and the barometric pressure. And that's pretty great. But again, you have the option to go in and change watch faces. The other thing that I have to mention on this one is that it is not a touchscreen. And again, I don't care about that. I actually think it's a really bad idea on a smartwatch to have a touchscreen, because it's just going to get bumped a lot. I like the always-on capability with no touchscreen. I don't like having to do this move to make my watch wake up, because there are many times that my arm sits down on a table just like this, and I tip the watch up and I want to see what time it is. I do not want to have to do the wrist dance to wake my watch up to see what time it is. It's a very pronounced effort. If you've ever owned a smartwatch or you've seen someone with a smartwatch, you know what I mean. And it's just a pain. So they got this right on the Garmin side. Now, a couple of the other things that I will mention is you do need to learn the button layouts and the menu system, and it does take a while to figure that out. Not too bad. It took me a couple days to get used to it. But basically, once you get used to it, you can navigate your way around. You do get notifications. You do have the ability to read SMS text messages on this. There are a few canned responses. They are not great. There is no voice recognition, so you can set up the canned responses that you want, but that's basically it, right? And you do have the ability to answer or dismiss a phone call that's incoming, so that's a nice feature. Some of the other menu options that you get, you know, at a glance, you can look at how many calories you've got left, your sleep. I've got the temperature enabled on the watch. You can load music on this watch. You can go into email and text notifications. You know, you've got your oximeter reading here, your heart rate status, your daily step count. I can look at my last activity. And there's just a whole lot of things, you know, weather forecasts, when the sun rises tomorrow, and we can get into all those things just from the menu of the watch, and you can customize what you want to see there a little bit. You have the ability to turn some of those on and off, and it's just I'm happy with the interface. Now, on the side of actual workouts, I will say, as I bring up the run mode here, that it does a really good job of quickly establishing GPS connectivity, and it also gives me the ability in the watch to pre-configure what I want to see on the different readout screen options that it gives me. It also has, this particular model, the Pro, has built-in maps. So I don't have to preload anything. I don't have to pre-configure routes. I've loaded, I can literally pull open in the menus GPS navigation, and it will let me navigate either with a compass or with the map feature, which I will show you right there. And there we are. And I'll show you compass mode here. It looks a little like this. So that's just at a glance in the menu, but then I can zoom into it and bring up the full actual compass on my wrist, which is a nice feature. So this thing has just such a wide variety of multi-sport capabilities, and if I can get this on screen, you can just kind of see as I scroll through here. These are only the ones that I've got enabled, but then we can get into the ones that I can add to my main activity screen. And it absolutely is a very large and full encompassing app. It's got some built-in golf tools. This particular model is not the best one for golf, but it can certainly do it. And I will tell you that one of the things that is a disadvantage, or a con, if you will, to the Garmin as compared to the Fitbit is that you have to go into the menus on your smartphone and you have to set your bedtime. And it's a window of time that you would go to sleep and wake up every night. And the sleep tracking on this device only tracks sleep during that time window. There is no nap mode. So if you ever don't get enough sleep for the night and you try to make up for that by taking a nap the next day, this watch is not going to do a good job of tracking that. Now the Fitbit Ionic will. It automatically tracks sleep and it will add to the sleep app in your smartphone. The other thing that I want to mention, this is the Garmin Connect app on my smartphone. This is on Android, but there's an iOS version. And it'll track a lot of things. You know, it'll do respiration, it'll certainly do, you know, sleep, calories in and out, floors, steps, heart rate, all of that. Any activities such as running or biking. One of the things that Fitbit has an advantage over the Garmin is that Fitbit is all-in-one. I input any liquids or waters that I drink and food that I intake directly in the Fitbit app. Garmin has partnered with MyFitnessPal, which is where I am required to enter any food that I eat for the day. So I've got to work two different apps on the Garmin side. I've got to do my workout data, and then I've got to do my fuel intake in a separate app. And it's not bad, but it's just a little bit of back and forth and then waiting for them to update with each other, whereas you don't have to deal with that on the Fitbit side. All right, now, on the Fitbit side, the first thing I want to point out here is Fitbit for a long time has used these little clips in their bands, and it's a secondary attachment that snugs up the band to keep it from getting caught. And if you're going to use this for things especially like sleep tracking, where you might move your arms around when you sleep, that's a good thing. It's just a little different. You know, they don't use the little loops that you would typically see that you run the straps through. So this is kind of one of the things that I mentioned earlier in the video, is when the display on the watch face is asleep, you have to pretty significantly move your wrist to wake it up. And I'm going to show you that here. Give me just a second to reset the watch. There we go. And boom. So there's a delay. Now, see there, it wakes up. It is a touchscreen on this watch versus the Garmin. Again, I'm not a huge fan of that on an activity watch, but it's fine if you need it. You can also wake it up. You can pre-configure your activities like so, and then you can just get to them with the touch of a button. It is pretty easy to wake up with the buttons, and there are only 3 buttons on this watch, so it's a pretty simple navigation system to learn, but it does require a combination of screen touches and button presses. I'll show you the Fitbit app here, and you can see that what I was talking about earlier, that you have more data that you can access in one app on the Fitbit side. I've got my water and my food intake. I've got my weight capability to track that, as well as, you know, exercise and sleep and all those details. So it's just it's a more all-encompassing app in terms of the ecosystem that they have going on with their wearables and the app on your smartphone. On the watch itself, you can access calendar data, certainly, activities, goals, averages in terms of steps and that sort of stuff. It's all on there. You can quick configure activities, and it does have capability on this watch to use GPS to track your runs. It's pretty accurate. I've found that I can cover about 2 minutes of running before it gets a full lock, but it does a pretty good job at compensating that lack of accuracy, and overall, by the time it does get a GPS fix, it's still pretty accurate in terms of the distance that I've traveled. So it's not too bad. You can set alarms on the watch. There's do not disturb modes on both watches. This one, again, does a better job of automatic sleep tracking. It's one of the nicer things that Fitbit has worked out. This watch does not feel as solid. It just feels, it's a nice piece of tech, but it feels cheap. I do worry that the screen is prone to getting scratched. It's not huge on my wrist, and I'm not a big guy, but the buttons, everything just feels a little fragile. Now remember that Fitbit absorbed Pebble, which used to be, they were really the modern day founder of smartwatches with their startup, with their Kickstarter, that kind of got everybody else on the bandwagon of making smartwatches. And this has a lot of similarities to Pebble's original interface, their UI, their design, and it kind of just feels like they haven't really changed a whole lot. It's just an upgraded Pebble. And if you liked those Pebbles, they weren't bad watches, but the quality of a Pebble watch is nowhere near the quality of a higher end, something like that Garmin, or even some of the nicer wear, like the Androids, like the Samsung watches, the Apple watches. They're just a sturdier watch than this. This is a thinner, lighter, cheaper watch. It's $200 to $250 US. And you get kind of what you pay for in those cases. Now, both of these watches have quick interchange bands. So if I break or just don't like the band that it came with, I want a different color or a different design, there is a quick disconnect feature, as I struggle to get this band off, that you can see both of them are done on the inside. You just press this little release here, and then you're able to pop your band right off, okay? And so they've made it kind of nice, and previous generations of these smartwatches, it at times became difficult to find a good fit or a match because it was a proprietary design. Not anymore. Now you've got the ability to easily replace that band, and let's be honest, in most cases, the band is usually the first thing to go on these watches. So that's a nice job that both did. So in summary, guys, I just want to mention again, this, you might have thought originally a little bit of an odd matchup here because we've got kind of two ends of the spectrum, but I wanted to draw attention to that very fact for people that maybe didn't know. And so just understand that these are really two different classes of watches. This is more of an everyday, all day, only watch that you would own. And if you, in particular, do a lot of sports activities on a regular basis, meaning like you always bike, or you're a very avid runner or hiker or kayaker, this is a really good choice. And I've been a long time user and fan of Garmin's athletic watches, and they really are one of the best out there as far as that goes. The Fitbit, on the other hand, does want to be your everyday watch, and it certainly can be. I probably would find myself taking it off if I went out to a nice event and just putting a nicer watch on, but you don't have to. If that's your thing and you just want to wear it all the time, it's great, and it can certainly do it. I have my reservations about the longevity of this watch from a quality standpoint and a quality comparison between the two. I would not expect to get more than maybe a year and a half out of this. If you wear it for an everyday watch, you wear it, for example, get it wet a lot, maybe wear it in the shower. It's just going to not stand up to the abuse as well. So just keep that in mind. Certainly nothing wrong with the Fitbit. If you're looking to get healthy, if you're looking to lose a little bit of weight, but you don't run every day, or maybe you just do 2 or 3 different sports and you really don't care how, about the specifics of the tracking. You just want to be able to compare your calorie burn to your calorie intake and have a good measurement of those. This is a good choice for that. They make a couple other different watches. Any of those would probably get that job done, but just know that there's a watch on this video for each of you, depending on the type of person that you are. And that's why I wanted to do it that way, because not everybody's going to run out and do, you know, a triathlon, or they're a competitive swimmer, or they're a hiker, or, you know, an avid runner, those sorts of things. And if you're just trying to up your health game, this is a good candidate for that. All right, everybody, so that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If this video was helpful to you or you enjoyed it, please consider giving us a thumbs up. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you thought. We'd also appreciate it very much if you consider hitting that subscribe button. You can find out all kinds of information about our podcast and our YouTube channel on our website, and you can find that at partscountergurus.com. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you soon. What I was trying to replace was a wearable Fitbit band. It was called a car coming behind me.